Much love from the mushroom, my man Dan, and I'm
But
Jeremy. How you guys doing? Dan is the man. That's basically all I gotta say. Let's just get started. It is July 7th. Awesome, awesome day. It was an awesome week. It's been an awesome month so far. Everything is just awesome right now. I have a couple things on my mind though. With how awesome things are, a lot of my awesomeness, I don't want to say it's from microdosing, but I definitely feel just really good since I've started microdosing on a schedule for like the last 6 months or so, I'd say. I probably haven't said this too much, but I feel like last couple of years I've definitely had like suicidal ideations. I definitely had some really bad days that dragged into weeks. So not even like I wasn't feeling great, but I was feeling like pretty bad. Honestly, I haven't had any hints of that in the last 6 months. I've just been feeling stupendous, amazing, all good adjectives. So here's what sucks though, and it comes back, creeps into my head a little bit. I equate a lot of my changes to myself, of course, but also to mushrooms, microdosing, been super influential for me. But they're illegal, which definitely sucks to just know you're doing something illegal. Uh, I guess like, what's your initial reaction on like, do you think people? I feel like one, people still like judge others for doing something illegal. They don't even like really think about what you're doing. But also, it's a little nerve wracking sometimes. Of like, what if, I'm not reliant on this, let's say, but right now I don't want to go back to how I was feeling 6 months ago and previously. What if it becomes extremely difficult to acquire mushroom microdoses? Like, what if they up the penalties or whatever it might be? That would be horrific. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I mean, well, first of all, I totally agree with what you were saying. First of all, with the personal changes and how much they've helped me, and my experiences have been very similar. I was telling you off camera, but I was just talking to a close friend of mine about some of her suicidal ideations, and I've definitely been in a place where I've been there at some of the low points in my life. And same thing, since I've microdosed and started microdosing on a schedule, I've felt that fade to almost none, very, very rare. And you know what I mean, that is huge. So I first of all, I feel like they shouldn't be illegal because of that, and because of how many people that have had immense changes in their lives from that. But I've also had days exactly like you're saying. Maybe I am microdosing, or maybe it's just a day where I'm thinking about it in general, where I'm enjoying my microdose, I'm feeling phenomenal, I'm almost feeling like there's almost this component of guilt sometimes where I'm like, wow, I feel so great and I wish other people could experience this.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's exactly what you're saying, where that thought of like, oh, well, this is still federally illegal. This still is something that is like, looked down upon. Like you said, a lot of people might judge you or say you're on drugs or this or that. And I think a lot of that comes from, well, I was watching a podcast earlier as well. And I think a lot of that, it's sad, is cultural repercussions that have trickled down, and a lot of that is from the war on drugs, and a lot of in the 60s and 70s, where people were learning about psychedelics in a very aggressive way, and there's these stories of people spiking punch bowls, and
Hmm.
it was a very crazy time. So obviously there were some people who got caught in some negative effects of that, but I feel like now we're in a landscape where basically I think our government is starting to see the war on drugs is not only not working, it's not sustainable. And I think now we're in the landscape of like, well, where do we go from here? If they're like, we see places like Oregon, Colorado, DC decriminalizing or even legalizing these substances. It's like, where do we go in this landscape? And I feel like that's where we need some people to start, kind of putting some momentum out. And it sucks that it is illegal, but at the same time, if there was no one who ever kind of pushed the envelope, I don't think it would have gotten as far as it is already. And I
Definitely.
don't think there would be further progress. So as much as it sucks to think about that, and to think about, like you said, if the sentencing were increased or if it got more stringent, I do think at the same time we do need people to be pioneers and to stick up for what they believe in.
Definitely. I agree with that for sure. I guess a couple thoughts from that. I don't think it's gonna get like more illegal because of the trend that
Me
we're
neither.
going
Yeah.
for sure. But I I do get a little concerned with its availability and its quality. So with
Mm,
I don't know like the best name to call it, weed, cannabis, marijuana, whatever. With that, quality kind of, in my opinion, has gone down a bit in Pennsylvania. Ease of access, not really much, like for the real market, not the black market. Black market, you can still get all this stuff. But when you go to a dispensary, it's not the easiest to go to the dispensary. You have to like get a card right now. You have to say you have like a medical condition, whatever. The quality isn't the best. A lot of the entrepreneurs in it are kind of only doing like what they think's going to make the most money. They're not even doing a lot of the products that people enjoy more or whatever, because it's just not as high margins. I'm a little concerned of something like that happening for mushrooms, where it's possible that mushrooms become decriminalized or legalized, but there is a possibility that they only allow it for medicinal reasons, or they only allow it if you get your government tracked medical card and you can only take 1 gram a month and it's only blah blah blah. So that's, I think, a little bit of a concern, because that would suck. And then also, this is a little bit off, but I think it's a bit related, is there's a lot of big time people getting involved with microdosing now. I think one of the biggest that I've heard, Peter Thiel has backed, I think it's called Atai Sciences. It's like they're valued at like $5 billion now, some insane amount. A lot of what they're making is microdosing, but it's like a synthetic compound, like in conjunction with like a Xanax, or I'm exaggerating, but like they're basically giving you drugs with a little bit microdosing in it. That's not that cool either, where again, maybe it won't be legal in the coming years, but I'm worried that the market like might get tainted as well. What, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a bunch from that podcast I was watching earlier, especially they were kind of discussing some of these same topics. But I think a lot of people who are thinking about like psychedelic capitalism or whatever you want to call it, that's on the rise. I think looking at how the medical marijuana industry went, and when that fully went, not even medical, just the legalization of marijuana, the capitalist environment, I think that's sort of what we shouldn't do. Right. I think we should actually look at that and see like, wow, this was like, because I think a lot of people are like, oh my God, there was all these dudes who were just millionaires and got rich because they invested and but then like you said, the quality is shit. The people who are investing and funding it don't actually know anything about the culture. Nothing. And it's super upsetting. And the other thing, as I was thinking,
not even the culture, just to butt in real quick, but they don't know about the medicine either. Like, I think it's Florida has a cap on your THC percentage. Cannabis has a lot more involved than THC. All the cannabinoids and all these words that I can't even really say, those affect your body, your diet, your whatever, where it's not just the THC, but people making policy have no idea how this all works, so they're just like, oh, limit the THC content. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of not effective. But I'm sorry, continue.
No, I totally agree. And I think it would be sad to me to see 5 years from now, if there is like big pushes for legalization for mushrooms, it would be very sad for me to see like, oh, like a dispensary where it's like, we've got Alaskan Thunderfuck, we've got this, we've got that, and then next to it it's like, and we've got like shrooms and this and that, and it's just like in a very soulless type of thing. And I don't, first of all, I think with the legalization of mushrooms is we need to think about it in a more, well, we got to think about the potentiality for it getting legalized. First of all, what are the purposes that would happen? Medical reasons, if people could push for religious reasons, various other things. But I think if it does get legalized, and if there is, if people do want to be capitalistic about it, which, there's always going to be that component, I think it should be done in a much more careful way of like, hey, these things exist, but maybe it would be a type of experience where it's a guided experience where you get this, then you get psychotherapy with this. And it shouldn't just be an isolated thing, because if you give people the access without the knowledge of what they're accessing, there's going to be more people who have bad times. There's going to be probably hospitalizations, people with manic episodes, because the main thing about plant medicine, as we've learned from observing tribes and cultures and ceremonies and rituals for thousands and thousands of years, is that these things need to be done in a very specific way and be treated in a certain way and be cared and handled with intention, or else the experience could be very well negative and almost more harmful than if you didn't take them at all. So it's like you were saying too, with the capitalist type of ideas of people just trying to isolate the psilocybin and then maybe mix it with something. the reason that people are doing that is because you can't patent just the plant itself in its purest form,
Yep.
which is already more than effective enough. So they're
Yep.
trying to find angles where they can make money or more money off of it. And that's not what we need to be doing. Is we need to find a way where we can use it in its pure form and facilitate a thing. And to be fair, also saying if we do open, let's say things like retreats open where they're guided experiences, there is also the negative of that where there's like people might become gurus, and then there's an ego around it which could also taint it to a degree. So it's a very, very careful space we need to operate in. I think there's going to be some trial and error, but I do think we can look at what the medical marijuana and the legalization of what we've seen with that. We can look at what's been wrong about that.
Right.
And I think we can further refine and try to find ways where we're using this with the intention that it deserves, and we're doing things in a kind of a more ritualistic healing way. Maybe someone's first time, it's a guided experience with a therapist, but at the same time, FCC, is that who handles FDA? Who handles legal FDA? Yeah, FDA. They also don't have a say in, like, they can say this thing is legalized now and on the market, but they can't say, oh, it's only in this instance with they don't control medicine as well, and doctors. So it's like, who gets that responsibility? It's a very, very, it's walking a tightrope. So time will tell, but I do think we need people that are thinking about it and handling it with care and love and intention rather than trying to make money, because that's going to taint it and it's going to completely go backwards if we navigate the space wrong.
Definitely. I agree with all of that. And I think something that some people might think sounds like a little goofy or like hippy dippy or whatever, but I kind of am a little confident that people microdosing are a little bit more conscious than others or than before, and they'll realize, like, I'm not doing this fake medicine that's not really microdosing. Like, I'm going to stick to the natural. I hope that the consumer kind of sees that and sees through these companies that are just trying to get one up on them. It's just,
we sort of touched on that last week of the people who are like, oh, well, we don't even want this isolate. We want the real thing. You know what I mean? So the community that does know about it should keep that integrity. But this is the thing of like opening it up to people who don't know as much. So that's where you got to tread carefully.
Where also I feel like people who don't know it as much, unfortunately, like are more susceptible, are like 10 times more susceptible to falling for the gimmicks of some of these companies, because like these companies put a lot of money into the packaging and the advertising. They'll probably pay an influencer to say that they took it, this and that, where someone who doesn't know too much will be like, oh, like that looks great, even though the simple mushroom will actually probably be more effective. So my next, I guess this will probably be like a closing thought. We'll see where maybe something else comes from it though, but what would you say is something you could do or something important then for helping the cause, helping the movement? So I feel like I personally, I tell anyone who's willing to listen to me about it, because I just want people to hear and learn. I try and get people to experience it, because a lot of people who talk shit on it never tried it. So say, hey, at least try it and then talk shit on it if you'd like. But yeah, I really just try and share as much information as possible. I try, and I don't know what people think of me, but I hope that people think that I'm fairly accomplished individual and like, oh, he does microdosing too. Like, microdosing doesn't affect you that bad. It's not like it's gonna ruin you, whatever, which I'm sure some people think. I'd like to start trying to help change policy. I don't know exactly how that'll be done. But that's like some of the things I think I'm trying to do or think might be effective. Is there anything you think like someone could do if they want to help be part of the cause?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing it right now. I think spawning healthy conversations that are transparent, where people can healthily talk about, hey, I use this, and it's not like, I think it should be no different than like, yeah, I drink coffee every morning. Or maybe once every 3 days I have a cup of coffee. Like, it's like, why is that different?
There's just an article a couple of days ago about people drinking coffee and how like no one realizes that they're addicted to a drug.
It's
crazy.
And that's the thing, is also caffeine, I think, is more physically addictive and actually has withdrawal properties. Versus like, I don't think mushrooms is kind of really even on that same thing. But I think the main thing is spawning these healthy conversations.
That's a mushroom word. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. We're fucking our grain spawn in the mycelium of these conversations.
Yeah.
but no, these types of conversations and being transparent and destigmatizing and unraveling what 60 years of a drug war that was completely ass backwards and demonized these things and said, oh, you take mushrooms, you're gonna jump off a roof. And it's like, maybe there was a couple instances of people who had really strong predispositions or were already schizophrenic, had a thing. I don't want to demonize and say that there wasn't things like that either, because it's like, but at the same time, those people might have, if they have that predisposition, that also might have happened without the influence of that. But I think the main thing is to talk about this in a healthy way and destigmatize and unravel and also let people sit in those uncomfortabilities and kind of be like, well, why do you think you're a degenerate if you take this, or why? And then start asking the people and be like, well, what is different than that and drinking on the weekend, and really get people to think a little bit more, because I think a lot of people's initial reaction is to be very guarded and to be very like almost angry if you try to like speak about these things. And I think it's like, hey, yo, I'm not trying to project. I'm not trying to tell you this is what you should do. I'm trying to talk about my experience, what I've done in a healthy way. And I think if we can create a much healthier conversation and start, like unraveling, like I said, all of these, all the misinformation that has been, like you talk about marketing and people being confused and falling for what, like the government is the biggest fucking marketing force of all time. And they have had campaigns and politicians and they've spent more money to get people thinking it's bad.
So. Jesus might be a little bit bigger of a marketing campaign, but the government is definitely a close second.
That's fair. Yeah, all the religions might have marketed a little harder with their conquests, but
but no, I definitely agree, and I hope like things are changing. It seems like they're slowly changing. I feel like there's too many people who like just aren't even willing to listen, which is definitely a bit frustrating. I saw like a comment recently. Someone was like, and it's crazy, people will like say it right to someone's face who's like, I love microdosing. I was crippled in bed. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so anxious, this and that. Like now I can do XYZ. And this one comment, I obviously remembered it because it bothered me so much. Someone was like, well, obviously you're happy if you're not living in reality. And you're like, dude, like, what are you talking about? It's subperceptual most of the time. You literally don't even feel it. You're just being better and different. And people, like, aren't even willing to hear you out.
Well, that's listen. The thing is that's the ignorance projecting itself outward, and in the mirror effect is because these people aren't living in reality. They're speaking on something that's again, is people always are projecting, and it's like you got to look at that through the lens of empathy, because I'm the same way, where those comments frustrate me endlessly, but then I'm like, wait, there's actually no validity in that whatsoever. You're living in a world where you're not substantiated in reality. You're actually not even educated on what you're talking about. You don't understand what subperceptual probably even means. You're not speaking from a point of understanding. You've never personally done it. And that's fine. I'm not saying you have to personally do it, but I also don't think you should speak like it's a fact. And it's like, you're on drugs and you're off in la la land. It's like, no, I think you're actually in la la land because you've been programmed by 60 years worth of governmental propaganda, and if anything, you're living in a much less concrete reality than me, or anyone who's microdosing is thinking outside the box, thinking how I can better myself. Meanwhile, you're just demonizing someone else's experiences. It's like I try to always see it through that lens of like, why are you saying this? Sounds like you might be projecting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know you had a lot of comments on your TikTok about like not following politics and stuff. Yeah, I wanted to reply to a lot and be like, dude, shut up. Like, these people are ridiculous.
It is what it is.
But yeah, no, I'm confident they'll eventually come to it. It'll just take time. When we're the popular ones, like, oh, everyone's microdosing, those people are going to slowly come and be like, oh, I'll try this out now that everyone's doing it. Because that's how it works. But that was a great conversation. I've really enjoyed talking with you, Dan. As always, a lot of great insights, a lot of great ideas. I'm kind of anxious and ready to start advocating and really trying to make a change and change some policies, make them a little bit more reasonable. But thank you as always. You have any closing statement?
I just think, again, keep these conversations going. Try not to get too pressed about the people who don't see it, and look at them through the lens of empathy. And you know what I mean? Hopefully people start picking up on the wave, and hopefully we can unbundle all the disinformation over time and show people with new evidence. There's more science. There's more studies being done every day that's the thing, is like with more decriminalization, more legalization, we're getting real data that is indisputable, that's objective data. So people can always refute subjective anecdotal experiences, but as you know, as we see these studies, as we see real numbers, it's kind of irrefutable, and we're getting more and more funding for those studies every day. So hopefully people just start to see the science in it if they don't want to believe the subjective.
Definitely. I love that. Actually, I got one more question for you. What's the favorite
Oh, yeah.
song you've ever made? Oh,
Changes every day.
yeah, right?
It depends. I don't know. Recently looking for something I like just because it's actually really on me, talking about something that is important, and looking sort of on this type of this same vein of like, you know, I was just looking for something, looking for some, like looking for more. And it's like, you know, as a creative, as someone navigating the landscape of life, I think we're all we're in this hedonistic treadmill, and we're always looking for more, and we're looking for more. But then you realize it's like, you know, everything I have is within me, and I can look within myself, and, you know, everything I've always needed was always here all along. And once you flip that script on its head, then that's where liberation comes from. So
Exactly. I might need to make a remix to it. Once you don't need more once you have much more. There we go. I'll work on the lyrics a little. But yo, thank you as always. Much love from the mushroom. Like, subscribe, be a guest of ours. We'd love to have you on. We'll grill you. You can grill us. It'll be a great time. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Peace.